Hi, this is Frank Schaefer. May I take a moment to explain the Trump-Musk meltdown? A little bit reminiscent of Godzilla versus King Kong, or for that matter, Stalin versus Hitler when they turned against each other. But you know, Democrats could learn something from this. Democrats have had a misperception of this country for a long time. They've thought everything's about economics. That people go to the right when they lose jobs move to Mexico or China, that middle class and white working class voters are angry because of economic issues, throw more money at it. But Democrats have missed a point that has become very obvious with Trump and Musk turning on each other. And that is, in the end, it's always about morals, isn't it? It's always about character, isn't it? Democrats always like to underestimate the impact of the culture war changes that they have brought about, whether it was legalized abortion or gay marriage, all sorts of things, by the way, that I support as a liberal and progressive, but nevertheless have never underestimated in terms of the impact on our culture wars. You see, the problem with Trump and Musk is that they are both bad people. Making a moral judgment, the kind of thing liberals don't like to say. For instance, liberals never want to tell the truth about Saudi Arabia, nor does Trump. If you look at the list of countries that he's just banned people to come from, Afghanistan, Chad, all these other places, weirdly enough, none of them provided 19 of the 20 hijackers like the Saudis did. None of them financed 9/11 like the Saudi royalty, princes, and wealthiest families like the bin Ladens did. And yet the Saudis can still come here because, you see, for Trump, like the Democrats, it's all about the money, isn't it? It's about the grift and the profit. And the same goes for Elon Musk. It's all about winding Trump around his little finger to get him to endorse Tesla, or get him to put more money into SpaceX, or give him universal power over Starlink to dominate worldwide communications. It's about the money. But Trump and Musk have misunderstood something, and that is the American people care about morals. Now, they're not always right about the issues. They're not right about a lot of the things they take a stand on, but where Democrats fall apart is when they forget that the real divorce between the Democrats and the Republicans happened at times, for instance, when Democratic progressive leaders were leading women's marches in Washington and forbade pro-life Democrats from participating. An absolute recipe for disaster. It's one of the reasons Trump's in the White House, because people got sick of being disrespected because they had other points of view about what a good person is, what morality is, sexual morality and all the rest of it, than many Democrats. And this is why people have turned against our elite universities and against the experts, because those experts have never respected and or reflected upon the fact that for most of us, our decisions about our lives hinge on what we think a good person is, what we think right and wrong is. Democrats are going to have to start addressing these issues honestly again, and stop pretending that everything can be solved economically or with more programs, or that the real problem is the Rust Belt and the lack of jobs, and what we need is to pay off student loans. You know where you see the lie of this idea so much is when Democrats come up with programs for childcare, for instance. And by the way, as a grandparent of 5 grandchildren, 3 little ones of whom live near me that I do childcare for every day of the week, I put my money where my mouth is. But nevertheless, in countries like Sweden and Finland that have very generous childcare programs and money from young mothers so they can stay home, and young fathers who can take a leave of a year fully paid from work, the birth rate is still declining and falling because people have lost confidence in the culture they live in. They put careers ahead of family. They have lost confidence in the moral direction of our culture. So when we see Trump go to war with Musk, I don't know which to bet on. I hope they take each other out and their power is diminished. But let's just remember, when they slug it out and one of them accuses the other of being a Jeffrey Epstein aficionado who hung around with underage girls, and the other accuses the other of treason against him and a lack of gratitude, and they square off, much as the vampires did in one of my favorite movies, What We Do in the Shadows. Rise up and face each other. We can be amused, but let's just remember something. The fight is about who's a good person, who's honest, who's a liar. The fight is about who went to bed with Jeffrey Epstein's rape victims and helped cover it up. The fight is about the qualities that it takes to be president. Maybe someone who's accused of rape shouldn't be there. And on the other hand, maybe someone who's the world's richest man should not be credible when you hit up upon employees, impregnate them, use IVF to impregnate girl after girl with babies with some crazy scheme about populating the world with geniuses like yourself and other eugenic monstrosities. You know, it really comes down to right and wrong. Both of these men are wrong. And liberal Democrats have a lot going for them when it comes to compassion and caring for people, but they have missed the point if they think that Americans voted them out of power so decisively and followed Trump only because of economic issues. It wasn't about the economy. It was about morals, not money. And it was about a left-wing elite that didn't understand that when you force some woman to bake a cake for a gay wedding and she's a Christian and doesn't believe in it, that you're making a statement about her and people like her, millions of people like her, and you make them very angry. When you tell people that they are somehow morally inferior if they didn't put he, she pronouns ahead of their names and identify themselves so they can be in good with trans activists, you are making a moral statement about them. None of these things by themselves put Trump in the White House, but as we see Trump and Musk square off, let's just remember something. That in the end, what their fight is going to be about is who is a better person, and they're both horrible, and they deserve each other. But it brings up this point again, that it is not just pocketbook issues, it is not just taxes, it is not just income, it is not just do the wealthy pay their fair share and food stamps. It is not just about Medicare and Medicaid and Social Security. In the end, people want to feel comfortable in the country they are in, that it is somehow moving in the right direction morally, that this is a place people want to have children because they trust the country they are in and the ideals of that country. When you see Musk and Trump fight, what they're really fighting about, besides ego and personality and clashing, and these two evil men at each other's throats now, what they're really fighting about is who controls our future. Both think they're in charge. The American people are going to get sick of both of them. And I hope they both discredit each other. But in the meantime, Democrats had better stop, take a very deep breath, and realize that for the last 50 years, they've been chasing utterly the wrong program. They're going to have just their thoughts or lose elections. Give you one example. All those Hispanics that Democrats welcomed turned out to be Pentecostal Christians and Roman Catholics who were pro-life and didn't believe in the things Democrats believed in. All those Asian people who came over from India and other countries, engineers and others, believe in getting married and having children and family first, and not the program of the left. The left in America had better wake up to something, and that is, unless it can start talking again in moral terms of right and wrong, evil and good. Yes, even divinity and theology. And the fact that our Christian culture is a place that we take freedoms for granted that they don't have in places like Saudi Arabia. Unless we can start talking in these terms again, we're going to keep missing the boat. MAGA talks in those terms. They may have the wrong solution in Trump, but they have been looking at the real questions. And it's time for Democrats to catch up and understand it's not all about money. It's also about morality. And what we see writ large in the Trump-Musk conflict is two immoral men who have lost their way fighting each other. But what it reminds us is that the stakes that we are fighting for are not just about the economy. They're about right and wrong. And unless Democrats can start talking in moral terms again that challenge people, we're going to keep losing. We need to do a complete rethink about how people perceive educated elites in universities and the distance they have from where other people live. what we call ordinary people. And here's a thought. Maybe the university culture in our country needs to be taken down a peg and forced to rethink itself. Maybe the time has come when Democrats and progressives have got to start saying, hey, where did we go wrong? And stop pretending these things don't matter, that sex with underage children doesn't matter, that somehow the kind of sexual license that came out of the cultural revolution and the sexual revolution in the 60s and 70s, the sort of thing that in the beginning began to produce the Jeffrey Epsteins of this world, or put it this way, didn't produce them, but produced a kind of a lackadaisical acceptance of the kind of immoral sexual behavior that has put porn in the hands of 12-year-old boys learning to choke girls out, slap them, spit on them, come on their face, whatever it may be, as sex education, because liberals have been too embarrassed to appear prudish and talk about moral distinctions and vice. Legalized online gambling that now is waylaying and destroying the lives of countless young men. The legalization of marijuana, fine, okay, but the corporate interests that have taken it over and made the chemical components in marijuana 40 to 100 times stronger than they were, say, in the 60s and 70s when I was younger. All this adds up to people looking at this culture and just saying, where are we going? So yes, Jeffrey Epstein and these people were the tip of the iceberg. Donald Trump and Elon Musk represent a fall from grace, the likes of which I never imagined could happen. But the impetus that put Trump in the White House was Democrats thinking that if they could just throw enough money at problems, people would stop asking inconvenient questions like, why is divorce accepted on so many fronts now that huge amounts of kids are being raised in single-parent homes or no-parent homes? What has happened to sexual morality where Pornhub is now the only real sex education your 10-year-old daughter gets? If Democrats start asking questions that mirror America's real moral concerns, they might win some elections. As long as they pretend that it's all about think tanks and flowcharts and money and income and interest payments and tax rates, they will lose. Trump is a fake. He could care less about any moral distinctions, but he played the game well and he talked about issues people cared about. Democrats still refuse to do so. They're embarrassed to challenge the things that bother most Americans and make them feel moving in the wrong direction. They are embarrassed to challenge the ideas and the concepts that lead so many young people to lose confidence in the world we live in, to the point where they're not even dating, let alone marrying or having children. And until Democrats start addressing these moral issues, which, by the way, would define Musk and Trump as totally unfit not only to govern, but have any position for power in our country, based simply on their hubris, their lying, their arrogance, their meanness, their cruelty. These moral terms are the language that Democrats must learn. My name is Frank Schaefer.